early people who came to this area and wrote about it were amazed and awed by the mountains, but they considered the area in general unlivable. And Pike was the first one, and then Stephen Long called it, the Great American Desert. So enamored as they were by the mountains, they didn't see it as a possible place to live. And so we have Rose Kingsley, who was a friend of Palmer's, who talks about without a single tree and no plant larger than a Spanish bayonet, which is another word for yucca. And we have Helen Hunt Jackson and Isabella Bird, who said similar things, the bare, bleak, bare, unrelieved, desolate plain. And since so many people have moved here from elsewhere, a lot of people don't realize that that's what we were at the beginning, was a prairie grassland. And one of the things, I'm a huge admirer of Palmer, and the more I learn about Palmer, the more I admire the man. I think he's very much like Thomas Jefferson. And so he came and saw exactly what these former visitors had seen, but he saw the potential. So he had this great dream for making it an ideal community. So his vision for parks, to make it into an amenity, required, first of all, water. So this is absolutely amazing to me, because I'm not an engineer, to have been able to see the potential of bringing water from Fountain Creek to provide for the housing that was going to be established in the North End. I just don't understand how they did it with the technology at the time. So they diverted water from Fountain Creek at about 33rd Street, and they brought it just by gravity all across the west side, up across Roswell. What is now Boddington Field was one of the major reservoirs. At Boddington Field, there was a waterfall that fed up a pond in Monument Valley Park, and then the canal extended over Boulder Park. If you look when you're there, is also sort of concave, and that was also a reservoir for the canal. And it went over to Memorial Park, and then water from the El Paso Canal was also used in the cemetery. Something a lot of people don't know is that Palmer was just an extraordinary naturalist, and he, together with J. Sterling Morton, who's credited with starting Arbor Day, started the International Society of Arboriculture in the late 1890s, and they published a journal, Arboriculture, from 1900 to 1909 when Palmer died, which seems to indicate that Palmer was probably the financial supporter of this journal, but it speaks very much to the fact that Palmer really knew a lot about trees. This is the map from the early park system, where he saw it as an interconnected park system. All of the parks that he gave and Perkins' gift of Garden of the Gods were all interconnected by what Palmer called park boulevards. There were tree-lined boulevards with trees, again, provided by Palmer, who sent workmen down to the Arkansas Valley to dig cottonwoods. And it's really interesting, in the archives at Colorado College in the Van Diest collection are really detailed instructions about not to take all the trees from one place, to be very careful about refilling the hole. Very astute and responsible. So that's the interconnected. All of these are designated park boulevards. And I'm pretty certain he got that idea from Olmsted, who's famous for the Emerald Necklace in Boston, which connects all of the parks with parkways. So he gave many, many parks, and his gift of parks from 1907 was written up on the front page of the New York Times. It was really a significant gift, and the gift of one individual. In the 1890s, he had to start buying up lots because all of that area had been platted. And once he got the vision of putting a park there, and I think one of the reasons for the vision of the park was that the railroad ran right along the creek. And most of the people who came to Colorado Springs came via the railroad. And people were dumping trash in the creek, and it really was not an amenity. And I think he saw the potential of it being developed into a park. So he started in the late 1890s buying up the lots. And then he started hiring workmen in 1901. And from 1901 to 1907, he expended, I don't remember the exact amount, but a colleague in finance at UCCS calculated for me that in today's dollars, he spent over $40 million in the development of Monument Valley Park, which he gave then to the citizens. And he really made a point of giving the park to the citizens and not to the city. And his only condition was that an independent park commission be established. I think that he wisely knew that often politicians had more of short-term goals than citizens did, and I think he trusted the citizens more than the politicians. So from 1908 until 1947, the Park Commission was a totally independent commission, very much like the library district is today. And then in 1947, a charter review committee recommended that the Park Commission come under the purview of the city, and since 1947, the Park Board has been advisory to City Council.